In this week's episode of Making with Luke and Ujjan, we interview Sabrina Katz, who is a rising sophomore at Ithaca College where she majors in documentary studies and production. She's a talented filmmaker who's been sharing her unique perspective with the world, covering topics ranging from romance to mental health and even local street art. Sabrina has become a close friend of ours, and we're pumped for you all to hear her story. With that being said, let's get right into it. So to start, please tell us about your life growing up, where you lived, about your family, and things like that.
I grew up in North Jersey, in Livingston, New Jersey. Lived here my whole life. Went elementary school, middle school, high school here. Two older siblings, whatever. My sister was more into, so my high school has like an amazing TV program. There's like a daily morning show called AM Wired.
AM Wired.
AM Wired. And basically like the opportunities at our school like are what kind of led me to loving production and stuff like that. So sophomore year I took TV production 1. I couldn't get into it freshman year because it was like full. So I took TV production 1, and it's basically like a TV studio, like professional cameras, like a switcher, audio board, like whole nine. And just like really, really like fell in love with it. Before that, I wanted to be like a nurse, like completely different like career path, obviously. And then junior year, I tried out and got into AM Wired. So that was basically like a class period where we like create stuff, like create like openers and like funny sketches and stuff for the show. We'd air live every single morning at 7:50 a.m. And that kind of like, I kind of always like prided myself on having like a good like work ethic, but that's really kind of where it started because I have to like wake up every morning at like 6:30 and like get to school. Why are you both? Wake up every morning at 6:30 and get to school. And our crew positions would like rotate every 3 days. So like one day I'd be the director, one day I'd be audio, one day I'd be like a host. One day I'd be, and there's 20 of us. And you kind of cycle through every job. So I kind of got like a feel for every kind of like crew position that would be in like an average TV studio. And then senior year, I TA'd for TV production 1. And like, I loved that. And then I was like, yeah, like this is what I want to do. And I was less interested in TV, like live TV, and more interested in like film. So I was like, okay, why not? And then here I am.
And so you talked about AM Wired, but also, if I'm not mistaken, you worked as an editor on the Lance newspaper.
I did.
So how did that play into your decision to choose documentary film rather than cinema production?
Interesting.
Or film.
You know, on like First We Feast, like Hot Ones?
Yeah.
When always with like Sean Evans, they're like, oh, like you did your research, like that's
yeah,
like that's like how I feel right now, like
let's go. I think that
was wow. What a compliment.
Okay, so junior year I took journalism as like an elective, kind of like a bullshit like elective, whatever, and I knew the teacher, Mr. Trad, shout out to him, like funniest guy, so cool, like so chill. I kind of like, so I did it as like whatever, like easy class, easy A. And it also like sounded interesting because like that kind of was like in TV, like whatever. And then I was one of like 5 juniors in that class, and the rest were like seniors. And Trad was basically like, okay, like when like scheduling for like the next year like came around, he's like, all right, so you're all like signing up for a newspaper, right? And I was like, huh? And I was like, I don't want to do that. He's like, you took this class, like you're gonna be an editor next year for the paper. And I was like, I didn't know that. And I was like, okay, like whatever. I was like, okay, I guess. And he kind of like guilted me into it, and I was like, okay, I'll do it, I guess. And so I did it. So it was like a class period, like senior year, and it was, I didn't do much. So I did more writing in like the journalism class. Senior year was more, I was more of like like proofreading and like formatting and like stuff like that, and like advertising for it, and being like, like if any athletes are interested in like having their like if they like won something, like interview them, or like any big stuff that was going on, like we'd reach out to like advisors and like higher faculty and like get quotes from them about things. We do like polls and stuff like that. And I liked that. I wasn't like super into it, but it was really good experience just being like learning how to reach out to people and learning like how to speak to say like the president like of the board of administration, like people like that, like higher up people who
Gotcha.
kind of need to be more like professional with, rather than like talking to a student about like the football game and stuff like that. Also with AM Wired, it was a really fun like segment we have is called On the Loose. So it's basically like you and like one person with a camera. We like run around during lunch period and like ask a question, like if you were to be like any animal, what would you be? And like it was super funny and like quick and like quick editing, and that's also where I like started to love, I don't know, like I prefer doing that over like sketch comedy and like sketch like planned out skits.
Yeah,
And
like
that's
the on the run like sort of feel.
right. Like I love that. And kind of just like having to be quick and like creative and stuff like that, and like bouncing off of like the person's response, like you don't know what they're gonna say.
Right.
And just like those two things mixed together, I guess I learned that I liked more, not nonfiction, but just like less scripted things than as opposed to like scripted.
Yeah, and your YouTube channel only has 6 videos on it, 3 of which are from the past 10 months. Do you have videos elsewhere, or were you making other videos in high school?
So my first like solo project, I guess, like not one for school, it's called The Letter. So that was basically my like creative portfolio submission for USC and MIU. I like saw it. I like watched like 30 seconds of it the other day, and I was like cringing, and I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe I made this. But that was really my first, I guess, just like solo video, like not affiliated with the school or anything. I mean, I can send you the AM Wired YouTube channel to where like a ton of our content is. We did like bigger, like longer form, because like, usually the
lip dub.
Oh right! Oh my God! I cannot believe I forgot about the lip dub. Yeah, lip dub. Well, I mean that was with the school, but that was a huge thing, and that's really where I started like loving being like a producer and like higher up, as opposed to like a camera person or anything like that. We'll get into that later, but yeah, AM Wired was more like 30 seconds, 30 to 45 seconds usually per like skit, and then we had like a Halloween show and like a holiday show, and those were like 10 to 12 minutes, and both of those I was involved in like writing it or producing it, and I really loved doing that too, and that was all junior year, so I kind of got more of a feel for that.
So one thing we've noticed, and I mean you've said it over and over, that like friends seem to play a pretty big role in your life. Did they have anything to do with your love for film and documentary, and did you have a creative collaborator or collaborators while you were in high school?
For sure. I mean, I'll probably say it a million times during our interview, but my friends are like the reason I do everything and like keep me going with everything. I mean, AM Wired, that's how I met my friend Jade. She goes to Ithaca also. She's gonna be a sophomore also. That's how like we really became close friends. My friend Julia, and like I became close with so like good like 5 to 7 people in that class who were like also like creative and loved like TV or film or anything like that. And also my friends who weren't involved in that were always like super supportive of it. Like every day during lunch, instead of like eating with them, I'd be in like the TV studio like doing something. Like every like junior year I never ate with my friends, and I feel like a lot of other people that could like cause a strain, or like their friends might have been like pissed off or like thought it was weird, but they were like always so supportive and like understood that it was like what I loved doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward more senior year when I was doing the letter for like that film for for USA and NYU. I asked this kid in my grade, Will, to like be in it, and he was like always like super outgoing, like super funny, like whatever. And I'd only like had like 2 conversations with him, but I knew he like would be the type that would be like so down to like
Mm-hmm.
be in it. And he's my he's my best friend now, and like he helped me with that. And, like he always like sometimes we just like if we're just hanging out, he's like, oh, like he's just like film me doing this, like whatever, and we like make like a minute long like music video, like stuff like that. Like he's super creative and is always down to do anything, and that goes for like all my friends, like always down for anything, like any time of day, like doesn't matter, like let's go, like very spontaneous. And like that's always the energy I've been around, and I'm very lucky that I've always been around those types of people, because that like encourages me and like fuels like my creativity. I'm like, okay, like if you're down, like I'm down, like whatever. Like it's not like, oh, like do we have to film, or
Right.
it's always like whatever, like Sabrina, like let's go, like when are you ready, like let's do something. So
Gotcha.
I've always been very like encouraged by my friends.
Like you said, one of your friends also goes to Ithaca College.
Yeah.
So that flows right into the next session, because that kind of concludes what we have for you about high school and now moving into college. What brought you to Ithaca College?
So my older sister, Amanda, she's 3 years older than me. She just graduated. She went to Ithaca. And that's how I first like heard of the school. Like when she like applied to it, that's the first time I'd ever heard of it. When like she was a senior in high school and I was a freshman. And it was always like on my radar, kind of. It was like a great communication school, whatever. But I always saw myself like at like a big name school, like USC, like as I said, like USC, NYU, Texas, like one of those. So come senior year, I applied to 9 schools, Ithaca being one of them, and it was probably like I would say it was like my last choice. I was like, whatever, like applies like as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, but I'm never gonna go here, like whatever, I'll just do it to humor Amanda. And come March, I got into like rejected from all like the schools I wanted to go to. I was like, okay, I should probably start seriously considering it. And so I was between Ithaca, Elon, and Maryland. And I considered Elon and Ithaca like pretty similar, but Elon's like a plane ride away. So I was like, okay, there's not really a point in like flying when it's kind of like the same thing, but like 3-hour drive. And then Maryland has like a great like journalism and like TV program, but they don't really have film. And I was being really stubborn at first, and I was like, it's fine, like whatever, I'll just like do that program and then like meet people, and then after I graduate, like it's fine, like you don't need a film degree to like do that. But then I was like, I'm being stupid in not studying what I want to study just because I want like a bigger name like Maryland. And so I was like, all right. And my sister, oh my God, when I told her I was coming, she freaked out, because like no one ever expected me to go to Ithaca.
And we touched on it a little bit earlier, as you described the types of videos you liked making in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But what led you to the documentary studies and production major? Did you apply for that program, or did you apply for cinema photo and then decide to choose doc studies, or what was that path like?
So I initially applied to like all the other like film schools as like a film, like cinema, whatever major, but I didn't at Ithaca because I'm so not a photo person. Like I just think photography is just like the most boring thing. So because like the cinema major had photo in it, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that. And I was like, okay, like I was like, doc studies sounds good, like that's kind of cool. So I applied as that and then got in. And then when I was like coming here, and I was like, I went to accepted students day and like talked to a bunch of people at Park, and I was like, I should probably switch to cinema photo, because at that time I just like thought of myself as doing like fiction stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I applied to like switch majors before school started, and they said no. And I was like, oh. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do it like next semester. And then during orientation, I met all you guys and met John Scott. And I was like, okay, I was like, this is a really cool program. And I loved how small it was and like how you literally got to know everyone that you were working with, and we're all in the same classes. And I really like started to think more about it, and I was like, documentaries is more like my speed and my interest. And like going, I guess, more into like my interests. I love people, and I love like people's stories and like capturing like real events and like real emotions. Like one of the videos on my channel is it's basically like a senior year recap. And so instead of it just being like a cheesy like GoPro video with like Galantis over it, it's more, so the first half of it, I asked like 100 different people in my grade from all different like friend groups and whatever, what are you gonna miss most about high school? And like included their responses. And then the second half of the video is like little like moments I'd captured like all throughout the year, whether it was like basketball games or like parties or like watching the Super Bowl with my friends or like post prom when we were at the beach, like anything like, and yeah, not just like the big events like prom and stuff like that, like driving around with my, like I like did a close up of like the clock in my car. It was like 2:40 in the morning, like driving around. Like just like little things like that, like little moments, like those are like the most special things, I think. And I really think I like successfully captured like what it was really like to be like a senior, like in my class and like in my friend group specifically. And those are always my favorite things, like about people. And I think that's what I wanted, my goal in a documentary major in nonfiction, is to like tell people stories and really like convey emotion and make people like feel things by watching my content.
Thumbs up to that. So for the audience, all three of us are in the same major. So all three of us ended up taking Cinema Production 1 this past school year. This class served as an introduction to making films and taught us about the many aspects of filmmaking. So if you could you please tell us about the films that you made in Cinema Production 1 and sort of the process that went into that?
Yeah, so the first one I made, I kind of forget what I called it. I didn't put it on my YouTube. It was called like Talking Walls, I think. And that was the one with the 16 millimeter
Bolex.
Film with the Bolex. And I think you said it in your episode with Jack. But a lot of people in like for that project specifically kind of just like ran around and like shot whatever and then kind of like came up with the idea afterwards.
Yeah.
And I was sort of in that boat, but I knew specifically I wanted to shoot like street art like around Ithaca, because there's like even though it's like a small town, there's like a surprising amount of like street art all around there, like in skate parks or like the side of like a building or in like a parking garage, and it's really, really cool. It's kind of stuff you just like drive past and don't really like pay enough attention to. So I knew I wanted to shoot that because it like looks really cool. And and then over it, I kind of had voiceover of two different people I had found two kids actually in my dorm. They had both like done like spray painted and done street art before and like had a little like insight into it. So I had them like talking about it over like the shots around Ithaca, and like had like ambient noise that I did in post, because obviously we like didn't have a mic with the Bolex. So that was cool. Like using the film camera. And it was just like I did it the weekend of Applefest. I kind of forgot that it was Applefest, so it was like kind of crowded, like the streets were, so it was cool also. I don't know, it seemed very like fly on the wall almost, because I was literally just running around like with the Bolex, like no like I'm also like not a big fan of like tripods. I don't know why, I just never have been. And I was just kind of like marching around with my film camera, and everyone was like, oh, like what is that, like whatever. And I felt like cool because they tell me. But so that was that project. I was like proud of that one. And then my final, which was called Same Sun. That's a story. I'll get into it, I guess. So in senior year in AP Lit, I wrote like a short story. It's basically about just kind of based off like something Will and I did. We like went to the sunset one morning before school, and it was kind of like about our friendship and like things like that. And so I was like, okay, I'll make that into like a film for my final. So I went home like Thanksgiving break and filmed my sister and Will like at this really cool like sunrise spot in my town, or like 5 minutes away from me. And like on the ride back up to school, I literally like had a small panic attack. I was like, Amanda, I was like, yeah, what we shot was great, but I'm like, I don't have enough for like a final. I was like, this isn't enough. Like, what I was so in over my head, and I was like, should I even do film anymore? And I was like, maybe I'll do business. And I'm like, if I want to do business, why am I at Ithaca? Like, just like going down a rabbit hole.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, and so we came into class that Tuesday, like for CP1, and I basically had my little freak out to Vanetta, and shout out to him.
Shout out
And
to Banana.
Yeah, good old banana.
he's like, okay, well, he's like, calm down. I was like, can I just use like a film I did in the past? He's like, yeah, but you'll get like credit off because of like, because we all had to use like the same equipment and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And he's like, okay, show me what you shot first. I was like, okay. And I like put it up on my computer. I'm so dramatic. And, like put it up on my computer, and like he like skimmed through it. He's like, okay, this looks like really great. Like let's go off of like the sunrise idea, whatever. I was like, okay. And like, because I was just stubborn at this point and like just really didn't want to like do it anymore. And we were just like talking and like brainstorming a little bit. And I was like, okay, I have an idea. Bye. Like leave. Like I have an idea now. And so it ended up being, so it's called Same Sun. And basically I had all the footage of my sister and Will, like at the sunrise, like super happy, like fun, like whatever. And then I had two of my other friends, well, one of Amanda's friends and my family friend, Jackson and Emily, they helped me, and I shot like a sunset scene with them, and they were more like, it was almost like a breakup. Like
Mhm.
they were like upset with each other. You could see they were like visibly like distant, and so it's kind of like the sunrise. So I and then like matched the shots of like both. So it'd be like Amanda like smiling in the car on the way, like leaning her head against the window. And then it'd be like Emily on the way to like the sunset and like upset and like irritated, and kind of like how like the sunrise was like the start of like a new relationship, and the sunset was like the end of one. And then I had a voiceover. My friend Isabel, shout out to her. She goes, she just transferred. She's going to Wesleyan. She's like an English major. I've known her, like we went to the same elementary school. Like I've known her forever. She's an incredible writer. And I was like, hey, so I sent her, I was like, do you want like a little like challenge? And so I sent her basically the rough cut of what I did, like no sound or anything over it, like a sunset, sunrise, whatever. And I was like, can you write like a 3-minute like story or poem or something like about this? She's like, oh my God. She's like, that's such a cool idea and like a cool like task. And she's like, yeah, like I'm on it. Until the next day, like the next night, she like had something for me, and I got my friend Francesca, and she like she's a great like speaking voice, and we like recorded her voiceover like in like the lounge of like my dorm, because we had to show her rough cuts the next day, and recorded her like that night, and like edited, like just put her voiceover over the film. And then I showed it the next day, and like everyone loved it, and I was like so happy with it. I was like, this is so cool. And then I was like, hey Sabrina, like tell everyone like your process with this. Like, was this like your idea? I was like, no. I was like, I kind of freaked out a little bit, like whatever. And then I just, the only really like fixes he told me to make were just to, like re-record the voiceover, obviously, because it sounded awful. And just add like ambient like nature sounds over it, and that's all I did, and then it was done, and then that was that.
So that kind of concludes cinema production 1, and lo and behold, next semester the three of us found ourselves in nonfiction production together.
There we were.
And we were working on projects there. And then obviously something happened and we all got sent home.
Mm-hmm.
So our question for you is, what was it like going into quarantine? And like, so talk about that, and then the video that you ended up making for nonfiction production while at home.
Right. So Ithaca, for those who don't know, decided to like go home for the semester while we were still on spring break. But the week of spring break, I was still at Ithaca working on a film, like as a PA. So I was still there, and I was like, oh. So I was kind of lucky and got to like, well, no, they said we were taking like a 2-week break. So I didn't bring everything home, but I took like a decent amount of like clothes and stuff. So I was lucky. But, so that was kind of weird, like just being like with everyone and being like, oh, okay, like bye.
Yeah.
And so going into quarantine was pretty rough at first, just like for me, like mentally. Yeah, it was a lot, and like as I said before, like I love being with my friends, and like not being able to see them, even though they're like a mile away, was just like so hard. And my parents are divorced, so, like going back and forth between houses and like dealing with that, and like it was rough at first. So my project for nonfiction production became, so everyone's prompt was what COVID-19 taught me about blank. So I did what COVID-19 taught me about mental health. And so in my life before, like I had never been like anxious, never like had any like hints of depression. Like it's always been like kind of a dark joke with my family. Like my brother, my sister, my mom, my dad have all like had a past with like mental health. Like I always didn't. So it was always just like, it was kind of like an ongoing joke that like I was like the calm one and relaxed and whatever. And being on the other side of it, it was like very new for me. And I think that was like even scarier, that just I didn't feel like myself anymore. So I documented that like very candidly in like video diaries, and just like the progression of how things were going. And then I kind of documented my like my progress, I guess, and like was showing the things I was doing to like keep sane, and like updates on how I was doing and like what I would do that day, like hanging out with my sister or my mom or like any of my family, and basically concluded with that I know like so many other people went through the same thing, and obviously it wasn't like cured in a day, but it's just about progress, and it's just about not giving up on yourself, and really just knowing that like everything, like all those feelings are temporary, and we'll get through it. And that was really the whole thing. It was simple, but I think I conveyed the message.
Yeah, and for those listening, Sabrina's film, What COVID-19 Taught Me About Mental Health, will be linked in the episode description if you want to check that out.
You should do so. It's a very good film.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So outside of film, obviously during quarantine, we also took investigative journalism as a class. And so you had the chance to work on some investigative pieces, specifically one talking about COVID-19's massive impact on small businesses. Could you talk about that process, and did you enjoy researching and diving into the written medium rather than visual?
To be completely honest, no, I did not enjoy it. I mean, my group before quarantine was supposed to like do like an expose about like this cult that's in Ithaca, and then going from that to small businesses, I was like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
It was just like, it was disappointing. But yeah, no, not the biggest fan of writing, and I feel like I kind of, you don't have to include this. I like wasn't my best work, we'll say.
Got you.
Yeah.
And also just, I was way more focused on the project for nonfiction that I kind of didn't give as much attention as I should have to that one. Yeah, not journalism itself, I've learned is really not for me.
I got you. Written.
I know
Written journalism.
Yeah. And I know that's kind of a huge part of documentary, like journalism, but yeah, not into
Yeah, well, the process of written journalism is very different.
Yeah, especially when, I mean, I couldn't talk about the economy for hours. Like that's not my forte.
Yeah,
And
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, you got to be exposed to like something you wouldn't necessarily think about on a regular basis.
Yeah, I probably should know more about the economy and things like that. So it was beneficial to me, but
yeah,
I'd be exposing cults and
definitely more entertaining.
Yeah.
And like we just kind of concluded, written journalism is a very different process than like making a film. And so now we're going to kind of shift and talk about your creative process and kind of see how that is for you. So just tell us about your creative process and how you would approach making a film.
All right. So a big thing for me is music, and I'm very much the type of person who, if I hear a song, like if you're ever in the car with me, I'll always be like, oh my God, like, can't you picture like this, and this, like going on, like in this scene, like if this was playing. I have a playlist of songs called Fetch Me My Oscar, and basically it's all those songs that like I like have a little like thing going on in my head like when I listen to them.
It's a sick title for a playlist.
Thank you.
That is cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of where like the senior year video came from, because the song in the background of that, what's it called? Whatever, the song in the background of that, I kind of just got the idea of like very like nostalgic and like sentimental, and I was like, oh my God, I could so be like, I love my friends, like the teachers are my favorite, like whatever, like I could just like hear that like over it. So that was kind of, okay, wait, hold on. The song is called
Lover's Carving.
Lover's Carving by Bibio. Check it out. But so that was one. And for The Letter, also the two songs in that, one called The Wheel is like the main song, but then also for the credits, Young Lost Love. Great songs. Sorry. But I love music, and I get a lot of ideas from just like listening to music and finding great songs. So that's where a lot of inspiration comes from. But if it's like something where I have to like come up with it like from scratch, like I said, I'm very people oriented and love like very strong emotion, whether it's like loss and love and things like that. And those are always kind of like my favorite things to document because they're so real. And so many people can relate to them like on some degree. And I feel like it's most effective to, like, I don't know, I feel like you capture an audience way better when you kind of can relate to them more rather than, like, obviously there's, of course, people love like watching documentaries to like learn about something or like about their interests. But I feel like relating to emotion is just a different level of like connection with the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember one part of your process that you have talked with us about, it was most notably when we were doing our original documentaries in nonfiction production. For the audience, the purpose of the class nonfiction production was to create a documentary of around 10 minutes in length, telling a story about someone else. And you mentioned that you really liked pre-production. You were having a lot of fun with that process. So will you talk a little bit about that, like kind of what causes you to like that and things that you feel best about in that process?
Yeah, so I've learned probably in the past semester that I love producing, and that's really the area I want to be in. I'm a business minor, so that also helps with just like being like in that area of it, I guess a little bit less than the creative. But I've always been very like detail oriented and very like if I love an idea, I will like work with it nonstop, and like it'll never feel like work. Like how you guys love editing. I really like editing too. Like with that, you say you can like sit down for 16 hours and you're like, oh, like it's Tuesday, like whatever. You don't even notice. Like that's kind of, it doesn't feel like work to me to like organize and plan and things like that. And I don't know, I love like being in control in that way. And I think that's just like one of my strengths, like very organized, and I'm good at talking to people and reaching out to people and things like that. Of course, I love the creative, like directing and things like that, but I know that I can, like, if I like share like the same vision as someone, I feel better about like preparing them and like preparing like the rest of the crew for like what's gonna happen and like for a shoot than actually doing it. That could depend on the project, because sometimes I do like even more control, and like obviously the director is in control of like what everything looks like and things like that. And editing is like, in editing you obviously control what the final product is, but yeah, I think producing is really where like my strengths are used the most. And yeah.
So when you're going through a creative drought, so like let's say for, I know you had a lot of creative struggles for the final product of Same Sun.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through things like that, where do you go to come up with your best ideas? Is there a place that you feel most inspired in or most creative in? Like for me, like for as an example,
Mm-hmm.
I come up with my ideas in the shower. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's like the place I go to just think about stuff. Is
I
there a
mean,
place like that?
honestly, a lot of it's on like Spotify, like radios.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'll pick a song that's kind of, I don't know, like if I'm, yeah, like if I have no ideas, but I know kind of like the realm of what I want it to be, and like if I want it to be like more like sentimental, like nostalgic or emotional or whatever, or like find a song that I think like kind of fits that. And then on Spotify you can go to like radio, which is basically like songs sort of in the same like realm,
Gotcha.
and like go through those and then like see what I come up with. So, like that's a big thing that I do. And also just like talking to people and like collaborating, like with Bonetta, like that's how I got the idea for it. Like he didn't come up with the idea, but it like kind of got like the wheels turning in my head, and I was like, and then I kind of got there on my own. But
Gotcha.
collaboration is always I feel like the best for either thinking of new ideas or like enhancing an idea you already have.
Yeah. So something that you take very, very seriously is font selection.
Yes.
You have even described it to us as a borderline obsession. So where did this first start? Like, tell us about that.
I know exactly where it first started. Well, okay, so in AIM Wired, there was basically a week where Mr. Daly, our professor, shout out to him, professor, teacher, he was obsessed with fonts also. First rule we learned, there was a poster in the studio. It said, "This isn't a real font," in Comic Sans.
Nice.
So like from that, I've always had an aversion to Comic Sans. It just can't deal with it. And he'd be like, if you see like Comic Sans like on like a professional like sign or whatever, like take a picture of it and like send it to me, because he's like, that's like not real. And so for that week, every day he'd give us like a handout. So it was 4 different fonts, and basically he'd be like, okay, so like one of them was like Helvetica, and he'd be like, okay, draw like an uppercase H and a lowercase h, and we'd have to like as best we could like replicate both letters like hand drawn, and like the best like 3 would be on like the wall of fame, and then like the worst ones would be like wall of shame, like whatever, and kind of like forced us to have like an eye for it. But I mean, you know me, I'm a little obsessive, and I think fonts are so important for like conveying a message, because and I'm also really good at picking them out. Like people think it's kind of weird. Um, like if something's in like sports jerseys, like that font is called stencil. And so like you're not going to use that for like the title of a film that's about like, I don't know, like nature. Like that
Right.
just doesn't fit. Like, I think it's so, like whether it's for like a title of a film or like on a website or like a business card or whatever, like there's different fonts for different purposes. I'm a big advocate of that.
Mhm.
And immediately on a website or a film or anything, if like the font's just wrong, like I will not watch it, or I will not like take the person seriously, because it just like says a lot about like attention to detail, and just like aesthetically like just looks wrong to me.
Right.
It's just always something I've been very picky about. Yeah, like for Apple, I don't know what font they use, but like it's very simple. It's sans, like it doesn't have like, if you look
Well, now it is. I believe back in the day, it used to,
like that's sans because
like
it
when
doesn't
they'd
have like
write
little.
Apple, it had the tails.
Yes, you're right. Like in the 70s and stuff it did. But now it's like very
Clean.
like it conveys kind of Apple's whole message, like very simple, very sleek, like not a lot of like, there's not much to it, like it is what it is, but it's very like clean. And so like that, like what's the word, that kind of
Aesthetic.
yeah, like
Emphasizes.
that's the aesthetic for the brand, I guess.
Never
Like
mind.
the aesthetic of the font matches the brand, I guess. So yeah, fonts are very important. That's
Sick.
that's where
As you
I'll,
can see, she's very
that's where
passionate
I'll
about
end my
fonts.
rant.
Very passionate.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you seem to struggle with most creatively?
In the past couple of years, I've learned that I'm not much of a writer, which I thought I was, but I'm not. Um, I'm good at kind of coming up with like concepts and I guess like more general ideas, but not specifics. And I feel like I just don't have the brain or the patience for that. Um, and like if I write something, I think it's good, and like I read someone else's, I'm like, oh wow, like that's way better.
Mhm.
So that's really just not one of my strengths. Also, I guess like very technical stuff I've never been super into. Like I feel like I'm good at like communicating like what I want from like a camera person, but like I couldn't do it myself as good as they could.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just don't have like, just really not, or like lighting, like I'm so bad at. I just don't have like an eye for it.
Mhm.
Again, I feel like it's a lot of like patience and like getting things perfect. And I'm much more, like you guys have said before, like you're more of like natural light and like sunlight, and I'm much more into that too. So like when I like have to use like lighting for something, I just have no like knowledge about it. Like I have basic whatever like knowledge about like interview lighting and like things like that, but I could
Mhm.
never like do it myself for like a set or anything
I
like
got
that.
you. I can relate to that, definitely.
Yeah. So this past school year, before we got sent home, you were a production assistant on a short film for Coca-Cola and Regal Films.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience.
That was a really cool experience. My friend Abby, she's rising senior at Ithaca, Abby Hatman. She, her and this girl Desiree were final. So every year, Coca-Cola and Regal Films would collaborate on like a competition for college students around like the United States, and they submit ideas for like a commercial for the two, like 45 seconds, like 30 seconds, whatever. And so Ithaca, Abby and Desiree were like finalists, like final five, I think. And I've known Abby for a long time. Like we met like in high school, like Game Wired and stuff. She did it 2 years before me. And she asked if I wanted to be a PA on it. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so there was 2 days of shooting. I couldn't go to the first day because of like my classes and things like that. But the second day we had shot at a movie theater, and it was a 12-hour shoot from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So it was like overnight. And that was a really, really cool experience. I did a lot of like running around and like the like stereotypical PA things, like running to get coffee and like bringing like people waters, like things like that. But just like being around, being on set, I feel like you learn so much more than you could ever learn like in a classroom, regardless of what your position is. Because, and also just like getting to talk to people like during downtime, like, and just learning what different positions are, especially as a freshman, was so beneficial to me. I learned a lot about myself, like as I guess a creative person, and also just someone, because always before that I would have been like a higher position or like doing it by myself, like directing something or producing something, but like being a PA and like having a lot of people above me, you learn a lot about yourself and like your own work ethic, and like your own goals. You're like, okay, I want to be this person, like I want to be this person, or like, oh, what is he doing, like I want to learn more about that. And jobs you didn't even know existed, because there's so many jobs on the film set that people don't even think about needing, like art department, like they created all their own like candy boxes for like the display case, because none of those were like sponsored. Like you see that for half a second in the commercial, but like those small details that you don't even think about are so important, and you just learn a lot about the smallest things, which I think is so cool.
So moving away from specific pieces of work and going into sort of a more broad take on your career, you're a woman in a male-dominated industry, film. Do you feel that there's an added pressure as a woman in this industry? Like, talk about your experience.
So in high school, I almost felt the opposite, because like the TV program at my high school was very like female dominated.
Oh.
So I'd always felt like very empowered and very like the boss of everyone, basically, because like me, like people like me or like Abby, like we're always like the head of the class and like bossing everyone around. So it was almost like encouraged for me to like take a leadership role and things like that. And I guess I had never really felt like I don't know, I never really felt like it was something I would like think twice about, like being like female in like this industry, I guess, until I got to school.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing, like, I think in our CP1 class, there's like 3 girls, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it was like almost weird for me to be like, oh, like I don't know, like not outnumbered, but like honestly, like I've never felt like discouraged like being a girl, because I guess where I like grew up and came from, that was never a factor, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always felt like I can do whatever anyone else can do, and like a lot better most of the time. Like, not to sound cocky,
talk your talk, man.
but like I know I'm capable, and I know like my abilities, my strengths, my weaknesses, and yeah, I've never felt or never been made to feel like I was like inferior or like discouraged because I'm a girl. And I know that's not the reality for a lot of many other people. I don't know, I think it's also like, I guess, my responsibility, like as someone who I'm very confident and like in my abilities, especially, that I can like, I guess, encourage other like girls to do the same thing, and that they don't have to feel any fear or discouragement just because they're a girl.
So now, I think you've been waiting for this moment for the entire interview.
The question?
You said you've listened to the podcast episodes and thought about what your answers to these questions would be.
I didn't think too much because I didn't want it to be like too scripted. But
Okay, good. Well, it's that time, the 10 quick questions to end the episode. Your answers do not have to be quick. They can be as short or as long as you'd like.
Got it.
And with that, let's get right into it.
All right. So you talked about how important music is in your life. What song or couple of songs do you think most accurately describes your life?
Well, one of my favorite songs of all time is called "I Gotta Find Peace of Mind" by Lauryn Hill.
Mhm.
She did it on like an MTV Unplugged thing, and I think that's the only time she ever performed it. It's like 9 minutes long, and in it she's like sobbing, crying because it's just like such an emotional song, and I love that song. It's basically about like finding peace in like another person, um, and I felt that a lot, and like think it sounds cheesy, but like feeling home, not like in a place, but like with other people,
Right.
especially my friends and things like that. So that's a big one. Um, I mean, more like fun, like that side of me, I guess, like the spins, like Mac Miller. Um, love that song. Oh my God, listened to it a million times. Um, but it's more fun, spontaneous, like young and free, like things like that's just like the vibe of it, and I love that. Um, more like I don't know. I have one for like every emotion. Like Lost, like by Frank Ocean, is also one of my other favorite songs.
Hmm.
Uh, and I guess it's about I don't know. I'd have to like really like if you listen. It's just such a great like beat, and also the lyrics are. I love songs like that. They're more of like an upbeat like tune,
Hmm.
but if you listen to the words, it's like darker and like more sad, which I always appreciate because like you learn like who like listens to it more or like appreciates music more of like a surface level and then on like a deeper level when you like actually listen to it and like what the artist is like trying to say.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate that.
Feel
Yeah.
that? Feel that?
Yeah. So next question is, what is one important thing that you carry with you every day other than your phone and wallet?
I mean, in my car, I always have like a first aid kit,
Okay.
and I've always been like the mom friend and things like that. Um, and not even like there's like first aid kit and like Advil. There's like a hairbrush. It's like a little like kit, like
Hmm.
pens, like anything you could possibly need.
All the
Like
essentials.
yeah, like and it is in like that little kit. Like I always like that. I always like being ready for like any situation.
Hmm.
Um, and being able to, if someone's like, oh, like, do you have a hair tie? I'm like, oh, like, I have one. Or like an extra pen, like things like that. Like I always like being able to, I don't know, be that person.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you weren't pursuing your current career, what would you be doing instead?
I mean, I always, so like I said before, like I wanted to be a nurse before I did anything in film because I always just love like people, um, like taking care of others. Like I said, like my mom friend qualities, like love like taking care of others and things like that. Um, but I think now probably being like entertainment, like business, not
Hmm.
as like an agent or anything like that, but um, like studio executive, like that's kind of like the goal now, maybe, but
Hmm.
um, something in business, but business that's involved in like creative things.
Hmm. Very cool. What's a film that you wish you could have worked on?
Oh, this is a hard one. Uh, hmm. So I have like my favorite movies, but like we talked like Dead Poets, Interstellar, like those are my favorite movies like ever. But I have my top 10 list if you want it. But have you ever seen the movie Waves?
No, I can't say
So
that I
I don't think
have.
so.
it's like I think A24 made it. Like so low. I think the budget was like 6 or 7 million, like which is like relatively like low
Relatively small for
budget.
a big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so incredible and so
Waves.
waves. It has. Did you watch Euphoria? Oh man. Also, if the question can like relate to like working on a show, it would be Euphoria.
Or
Also.
yeah, Zendaya is my woman crush every
Oh,
day.
me too.
Yeah.
But Maddie from Euphoria is in Waves.
Okay.
Um, but it basically, I'm not gonna spoil it. You have to watch it. But things like Waves or like mid 90s, like like small budget, like very like intimate, like films like that is so my style. And like I would love, like, oh my god, those would have been like incredible to work on. Like mid 90s, like they picked up kids off the street to like skate and like be in the movie, like things like so spontaneous and things like that, and it worked so well. So I just think those are like incredible projects and just so emotional and real without, yeah, like you can tell how authentic it is. I think the small budget like lends itself to that. Um, but just like simple stories that really capture like humanity and like the day in the life of people.
So moving on, what is your dream piece of equipment?
Okay, so I feel like I'm not educated enough to answer this question because, as I've said, I'm not like a techie person, and like I don't know what the best gear is.
Valid.
I know I should say like some kind of camera, but like that's not what I'm gonna say because
Yeah, you know, it
I
could
don't
be
know.
literally anything that would make your life a lot easier creatively.
I just want like a nice like setup for like either like editing or like things like that, like one of the big like Mac desktops with like huge like processor and like stuff like
Yeah.
that, like in park in one of like the like sound editing room, there's like the speakers
The
that are like
double.
hanging from the ceiling. Like I want that, like that whole setup. That's like the dream. Like I love that. So I guess that would be like my dream equipment.
Definitely
Very
agree
cool.
with that.
And so you kind of shied away from the cameras already, but what secondary piece of equipment would you say is most important?
I mean, like going off of kind of previous answer, like a hard drive, I guess.
Okay.
Because like in college, I've learned to like edit off of a hard drive, and it just makes it so much easier, like especially for like storage and like being able to like edit anywhere.
Organization too.
Yeah, organization for sure. Like I'm the type to like have like different folders for everything and like subfolders within those folders. So it's super helpful.
Well, sticking with the whole gear theme, do you believe gear matters?
Like no, I don't think it does. Obviously, if you're, I don't even like making like a movie like Inception or Interstellar, like okay, like clearly like you need that gear. But if we're just talking on terms of like making something, just making something or like making something decent, absolutely not. I think there was like the iPhone camera, like it's like it sounds so cheesy to say, but like if you have like a phone and like a computer to edit, like the
Yeah.
iPhone commercials are my favorite thing ever. Like every time I watch one, either I get chills or I cry, like every time. And most of them aren't even like video. Like it's just like still
Pictures.
frame like pictures.
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters. Like the gear, it's just about like the message and if you're able to like convey emotion, like just make like the audience feel something by watching your content. Like you don't need a $150,000 camera to do that.
So the next question is there truth to the phrase fake it till you make it?
Yeah, there is. But if you're not authentic and like intrinsically motivated, you're not going to get too far. Like people will notice that. Like people will realize if you're fake. Like fake it till you make it in the sense of um like being confident, absolutely, but not in being there for the wrong reasons, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like if you're like, oh, I'm only here to like meet like whoever or like meet famous people or like to promote my own brand, like no, you're not gonna get too far because people will see immediately that you're fake. But if you're like, I'm gonna walk in like to the set, like I own the place, and like ask like whoever like if they need help or like whatever, like ask people like questions and kind of like use your confidence and like your people skills and like kind of faking that you're more professional or like higher up than you are, absolutely, that's such like a necessary trait. Yeah, but I think people can pick you out very, very quickly if you're not authentic.
So the next question is, how important are other people in the road to success?
So important. Like anything, yeah, you're not going to get anywhere doing something by yourself. And like I said before, the collaboration is so important, whether it's about an idea or if it's like, oh, do you like this shot? Or like just getting a second opinion on something is so important creatively. And also in terms of like learning, like professors or like Mr. Daly, like my teacher in high school, like I would not be like where I am without him, like him motivating me to like pursue whatever. And or even like my friends that I had like in A and Wired, like they motivated me to do certain things or commit to ideas, and it like you wouldn't be anywhere without other people. Like you, or if you do something successfully by yourself, like you won't get very far because you need people to promote it or people to watch it. Like you need an audience. Like you, okay, scratch everything else. No, you can't do anything by yourself. You need other people.
Yeah. So it's about that time where we've got our last question for you.
With a little sappy music over it.
Yep. Yep. And that is, what is your hope for the future in your career?
Like I said before, it's very important for me to convey authenticity and just to convey emotion and to make other people feel something. I know my favorite things that I watch and enjoy are things that like make me cry every time I watch them and stuff like that. And my favorite thing is to like show someone something I've made and for them to have any sort of reaction, like if they're smiling at a certain part or if they're laughing, like anything like that. I love relating to people and having an audience that kind of can relate to the same emotions I feel, and I think that's so important for like creators, especially to like really capture attention. So I guess the goal is to really just create things and have a vision, and it's almost like make other people passionate about the same things I'm passionate about.
That's awesome. Well,
Great answer.
that's all we've got for you.
I know.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate
hopping
it.
on the pod.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Thanks for taking the time to listen as we took a deep dive into Sabrina's journey and creative endeavors. Please let us know what you think of the podcast by writing a review, or let us know what you want to hear by leaving us a voice message on Anchor. We'd love to hear from you. That's it for this week's episode of Making. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks.